Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Britt Brings It Home. I share tips and motivation to help you create a healthy and organized home, both here and on my blog, brittbringsithome.com, which I will have the link to down below. I share tips for organization, cleaning with non-toxic products, clean beauty, healthy recipes, and more. I dealt with eczema for a long time, like 15 years, I think. And I was able to heal it naturally. So I'm doing a whole series of videos all about how to heal your eczema naturally. So check out my first two videos in this series about my eczema story, how I came to find out that I had eczema, and how I began my healing journey. And then my second video was on eczema and the gut and the connection between the gut and eczema. And I talked about how when we get to the root cause of eczema, usually it is gut issues. So I would really recommend going back and watching that video first if you haven't already, because it's really important that we address that and we know what's going on before we move on to healing our eczema, which we're going to start in this video. So now that we know all that, it's time to start healing your eczema. And that's what we're going to start talking about in this video. Even though, like I said, eczema is caused by gut issues, the cause of your gut issues can be different things, and you can have different triggers. So each person is unique and their eczema might be a little different. They might have different symptoms and different triggers, and it's really important that you find out for yourself what your triggers are. Figure out what causes your gut to leak and causes inflammation in your body, resulting in eczema. So I shared in my last video that eczema is usually caused by leaky gut. And leaky gut and dysbiosis, or the imbalance of bacteria in your intestines, and that also contributes to leaky gut, and both of those can be caused by foods that we're eating. So whether you have eczema or not, it's important that you limit these foods that can cause inflammation in the body. So these inflammatory foods are processed foods that are made in factories by men instead of in nature by God, refined carbohydrates. So again, those are processed foods too, but specifically processed carbohydrates that are simple carbs, not complex carbs. So think like packaged crackers and cookies and other snacks and bread, those things. Processed meat, so lunch meat instead of like fresh chicken breast that you cook yourself. Corn, soy, gluten, and other grains. Dairy, chocolate, coffee, and other caffeine. Alcohol, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and other sweeteners, artificial sweeteners. So think things that don't have calories, but they're still sweet. Those can still cause inflammation. Processed trans fats that are made again by man instead of by God, and fats that are high in omega-6. So vegetable oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, poppy seed, walnut, cottonseed, sesame, soy, and canola oils. All of those oils are very high in omega-6. And when we have a lot of omega-6 and not a lot of omega-3s, that imbalance can cause inflammation. And then some more processed things: artificial flavors, artificial colors, GMO foods, and foods that are sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. So non-organic foods. So all those foods, along with medications, stress, and other environmental toxins, can lead to leaky gut. So they should be reduced in anyone's diet, not just if you have eczema. But if you have eczema or another autoimmune disease, even healthy foods, even foods that I didn't just list there, that are healthy foods for the normal person, even they can cause inflammation and trigger flare-ups for your eczema. When you have leaky gut, the tight junctions in your intestinal wall that separate your intestines from your bloodstream, they start to separate. And food particles, bacteria, and toxins can leak through into your bloodstream. Well, those food particles that enter into your bloodstream, your immune system tags them as foreign invaders. So the next time that you eat the foods, your immune system remembers them and it launches an attack on them. It causes a reaction or a flare-up. So there are 3 different types of negative reactions that your body can have to the food that you eat. You can have food allergies, food intolerances, or food sensitivities. So a food allergy is when your body thinks that a food that you eat is a foreign invader and it releases antibodies called IgE antibodies. And reactions to those foods that you eat when you have an allergy are usually more severe than when you have a food sensitivity. So you might get hives, you might go into anaphylactic shock, and it could even cause death. And the reaction time is a lot shorter than food sensitivities. So if you're allergic to peanuts and you eat a peanut, you might notice a reaction right away, like within seconds. You might start to feel your throat swelling up. A food sensitivity is similar to a food allergy. It's when your body thinks that a food that you're eating is a foreign invader and it reacts to it. It releases antibodies, but instead of IgE antibodies, they are either IgG or IgA antibodies. The reaction time for food sensitivities is usually longer, so you might not know right away that you're sensitive to a food. It could take a day or a few days to have a reaction. For me, I am most sensitive to nightshades, so if I eat a nightshade on accident, I usually don't know right away. So sometimes, when you go out to eat, you don't always know exactly what they put in your food, which is why it's important to, ask or look at the menu and make sure it doesn't say anything that you're sensitive to, but then also ask, because a lot of times they put seasonings in the food like paprika, which is a nightshade. I'm not as sensitive as I used to be, so I don't always ask anymore. But if I do accidentally have some nightshades, I don't know right away. It's usually a day or more, sometimes even up to 6 days before I get any kind of a reaction, which will be a flare-up of eczema on my hands. And then usually the reaction to food sensitivities is not quite as severe as it is for food allergies. So you're probably not going to go into anaphylactic shock and your throat's not going to close up, and hopefully it won't lead to death. And then the last type of reaction is food intolerances. So food intolerances do not have anything to do with the immune system. They are all digestive system related. You have food intolerances when you are lacking a certain type of enzyme to digest a certain kind of food. So if you are lactose intolerant, that means your body is not able to properly digest lactose, which is the sugar found in milk. So you're lacking a certain type of enzyme that breaks down that dairy. So when you do consume dairy, you have upset stomach, diarrhea, constipation, those type of digestive problems. It's not going to cause eczema, it's not going to cause hives and things like that. So which one of those 3 do you think is related to leaky gut? If you have leaky gut, do you think you're going to get food allergies, food sensitivities, or food intolerances? I'll give you a second to answer that to yourself. Okay, yes, you would get food sensitivities. When we have leaky gut, our gut leaks and food particles can get into your bloodstream. Your body tags those as foreign invaders, and every time you eat that, it causes an IgG or an IgA reaction. When we keep on eating those foods over and over, we develop a sensitivity to them, and whenever we eat them, it causes more and more inflammation in the body. And with eczema, that inflammation is on the skin. So in order to heal your eczema, it's important, first of all, to eliminate the foods that you are sensitive to. And there are 2 ways you can go about doing that. You can do an elimination diet, which takes longer, is more work, but is more effective. Or you can have food sensitivity testing done, which is faster and easier, but not as effective. So I did both of them. Let me explain a little bit about each one. So first is a food elimination diet. An elimination diet is where you cut out a lot of foods. You cut out inflammatory foods and foods that are common for food sensitivities. And you do that for a certain amount of time, and then slowly you start adding in one food at a time, and just take notice and see what kind of effect you get when you add in that food. If it causes an eczema flare up or any other kind of a reaction in your body. So I did an elimination diet called the Autoimmune Paleo diet, or AIP for short. It's very similar to the Paleo diet, but it's even more restrictive than the Paleo diet is. If you haven't heard of Paleo, or if you haven't tried Paleo before, you don't really know what it is. The Paleo diet focuses on eating real whole foods as close to nature as possible. It cuts out dairy, gluten, and other grains, legumes, which are like green beans and peanuts, processed foods and processed meats, alcohol, sugar, and other sugar substitutes. You can have honey and maple syrup and stevia, but that is it. Just those natural sweeteners, not processed sugar and other artificial sweetener. And then it cuts out vegetable oils and trans fats. So those are highly processed oils that are damaged and high in omega-6 and can cause a lot of inflammation. So the paleo diet already is a low inflammatory diet, and I still stick pretty close to that. I do have some dairy and grains and legumes now, but not a lot. Okay, so that's paleo, and then AIP narrows it down even more. So AIP cuts out nuts, seeds, nightshades, and eggs. And nightshades, if you don't know, are peppers, tomatoes, tomatillos, eggplant, and potatoes, except for sweet potatoes. Thank goodness, because sweet potatoes are one of my favorite vegetables. So basically you cut out a lot. There's not a whole lot you can have after that, I'll be honest with you. So basically you are down to minimally processed meat, so not lunch meat, just like, chicken breast and ground beef and steak and salmon and things like that. And some vegetables, all the vegetables except for nightshades, all fruit, and healthy oils like olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, beef tallow, duck fat, like things like that, fats from animals. So I cut out those foods for 30 days. 30 days I ate on the AIP restrictive diet. And then slowly I started adding back in one food at a time. And I kept a journal. I kept track. Whenever I added a food back into my diet, I wrote it down, and I wrote down any kind of reaction that I noticed. So through that elimination diet and through paying attention to my body and journaling, I was able to figure out that my 3 biggest triggers were nightshades, all the nightshades, every one of them, dairy, and gluten. Thank goodness I can handle some coffee and chocolate, because those were my 2 biggest weaknesses of all those inflammatory foods. Now, I don't have a lot of them. I don't drink tons and tons of coffee and eat tons of chocolate every day, but I do have some of it, and I do just fine on it. And I noticed that nuts I can handle in small quantities only, or I could handle in very small quantities at first. So if I ate like a handful of cashews or pistachios, I would kind of get a flare up. My hands would turn red, but now I can handle them a whole lot better than I used to. And I'm seeing that with all of my triggers, all of them, I am handling them better and not getting as many flare-ups anymore as I used to. So I would highly recommend doing the autoimmune paleo diet, eliminating these things and slowly reintroducing them, and keeping track in a journal of how your body reacts to them. Nightshades might not bother you like they bother me. Maybe dairy is your biggest trigger. Dairy is one of my triggers, but it's not super bad anymore. Now I can handle it a whole lot better than I used to, and I only get a flare-up when I have a lot of dairy. So I don't drink milk. I just basically have a little bit of cheese every once in a while. But it's just amazing what you can find out when you really pay attention and listen to your body and just take the time to notice any reactions that you have. I mean, it's cool whether you have eczema or not. It's really just empowering to figure out what foods your body loves and what foods your body doesn't like as much. Maybe you gain weight after having a certain type of food, or maybe you have bloating after a certain type of food. Maybe you get a headache with a certain type of food. Whatever it is, just take note of it. And when you notice a food that you have some type of a sensitivity to, don't just leave that on your journal and just forget about it. Use that knowledge that you've gained and apply it to your diet, and just make sure that you're not eating a lot of foods that you have sensitivities to. Maybe every once in a while you have some, but I wouldn't make it like a daily thing. So like I said, an elimination diet is not easy, and it takes longer. It was a month of eliminating everything, and then it took a few months after that to reintroduce everything. So total, it took a few months. And when you're adding things back in, you're not just adding like all of dairy back in, you're adding one thing at a time. So like cheddar cheese, blue cheese, milk, like one type of dairy at a time. So it does take time, it takes patience, but it is totally worth it. It's worth it to figure out what you have sensitivities to, and you can start eliminating those things or reducing those things and start really healing your gut, and then therefore healing your eczema, and start allowing the inflammation in your body, both in your gut and on your skin, to calm down. Okay, so that's the hard way, but the effective way. The second way to figure out what your food sensitivities are is to do food sensitivity testing. So I started with an autoimmune paleo diet to figure out what my sensitivities were. And when I eliminated those things, my skin started to clear up and it was getting much better. However, I did still get some small flare-ups here and there. So I figured I probably had some kind of a sensitivity that I just didn't eliminate when I was on AIP. You might be sensitive to strawberries. Strawberries are allowed on AIP. They're a fruit, so you wouldn't have eliminated them. So that's when testing could come in handy. So I took the food sensitivity test from Everlywell, and I'll put the link to that down below. There are two Everlywell food sensitivities. There's the regular one, which tests 96 different foods, and then they have a comprehensive one which tests more. It tests 204 different foods. So they don't test every food known to man, but they test a lot of different foods that people commonly have sensitivities to. So I did this test, and all you do is like prick your finger, and then you collect the blood. They give you a little thing to collect the blood with, and they give you the packaging to send it back to the company. And then within like a week or two, I got my results back. And it was actually kind of surprising. So there's different levels of sensitivities, and I wasn't highly sensitive to anything according to this test. I wasn't like moderately sensitive to anything either, but I did have mild. So it came as no surprise to me that dairy and gluten were some of my mild sensitivities. However, some of it was surprising to me. I did not know this. I was mildly sensitive to yeast, coconut, green beans, mushrooms, and bananas. And these are all healthy foods. They're healthy foods that I had been eating a lot of. I was using coconut oil in like all of my cooking. I had already cut out gluten, so in recipes, instead of using wheat flour, a lot of times I was using coconut flour. So it was helpful to know what these other sensitivities were that were contributing to my eczema. So I did reduce how often I was eating these things, and I definitely noticed a difference. And now I notice that when I have a lot of coconut, my throat starts to get itchy and kind of swells up a little bit, but I can handle a little bit of these things. Bananas, don't really notice anything. Green beans and mushrooms, I don't notice anything. Yeast, I definitely do notice I get an eczema flare-up when I consume it. So I said earlier that food sensitivity testing is not as effective as doing an elimination diet, and here's why. I knew already from doing the AIP diet that I had a sensitivity to nightshades, all nightshades, tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, tomatillos, eggplants, all of it. I could not have it. However, the testing did not pick up on that. It didn't say I was highly, moderately, mildly, low, nothing. Didn't have any kind of sensitivity to those foods. Now, that may be because I had already cut those things out of my diet. I wasn't having them at all, so they weren't in my blood at all. So it may just have not shown up on the test. So the best thing to always do is to listen to your body. Any kind of testing that you do may not be 100% accurate. It just won't. Nothing will be as accurate as listening to your body, eating foods, and seeing how you react to those foods. But food sensitivity testing can still definitely be helpful. If you do food sensitivity testing, I would kind of combine it with the AIP diet. So eliminate all those inflammatory foods, do the food sensitivity testing, and eliminate those foods too. Do that for 30 days and let your body heal and get rid of that inflammation that's going on in your body. And then slowly start introducing one food at a time. Start with the foods that weren't on your sensitivity testing. Bring those foods back in, and then later you can try adding back in those foods that the testing said you were sensitive to and see if they do cause any kind of reaction in your body. So like I said, I did heal my eczema. I got rid of all those foods I was sensitive to. My eczema went away. However, I do still get some flare-ups every now and then when I have some of the foods that I'm sensitive to. They are not nearly as bad as they were before. They're only on my hands. They're not on my neck, under my bra, in my armpit, on my eyes, nowhere else. Just my hands, and they're not as severe as they were before. And I don't get flare-ups every time I have those foods I'm sensitive to. So it is getting better. It is healing more and more, but it's still not completely healed. And we're going to talk more in the next video about how we can continue to heal. And it's not just cutting out our foods that we're sensitive to, but there's more that we need to do to actually get rid of those sensitivities too and heal our eczema for good. So in our next video, we're going to talk about how to heal our gut. So this is something you should be working on after you cut out those food triggers. After you do your food sensitivity testing or your elimination diet, you figure out what you're sensitive to and you cut those things out. Then we can begin the real work of healing our gut and healing our leaky gut, getting those tight junctures back together and having an intestinal wall that is strong and doesn't leak food particles into our blood. So I know I don't, and you probably don't either, want to eliminate those food sensitivities forever. I miss tomatoes. Tomatoes were some of my favorite foods that I had before, but I haven't eaten like a good tomato, like a slice of tomato with salt and pepper on it, fresh from the garden, in years. It's been years because I know what it's going to do to my body and I don't want to get an eczema flare up. It's not worth it to me, because then after eating that tomato, it'll take at least a week to clear that flare up. But I know I'm going to continue to work on my gut, healing my gut, and eventually I will be able to eat those foods again. And so will you. Definitely not all the time. And especially like those inflammatory foods like dairy and gluten, I'm not going to have all the time. Even if they don't necessarily cause an eczema flare up later on, they could cause inflammation another way, or they could cause me to develop eczema again. So we've got to work on the gut. We've got to put those tight junctures back together, heal our gut lining, and then we can heal our eczema once and for all. So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope it was helpful to you. If you have eczema, I hope you learned something that you can apply to your life and you can start feeling some relief soon. If you have a friend that has eczema or a friend with a child that has eczema, please share this with them so that they can gain some knowledge and they can start their journey to healing their eczema too. Healing eczema is definitely a journey. It takes time. It takes work. It takes patience. It's not just take a pill and your eczema's gone. Not to get to the root cause and actually cure it, have it gone for good. In order to do that, it takes time, but you can do that. You've got this. You can heal your eczema. So I am here if you have any questions or concerns, or if you have any tips. If you've healed your eczema, you found something that works for you, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what helped you heal your eczema. All right, guys, so I will catch you in the next video. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Tell YouTube that you liked it, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so that you get notifications. You know when I come out with a new video, whether it's a video in this series about eczema or another video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. From my home to yours. See you next time.